Hello everyone, Jim Phillips here. Welcome to another episode of Java with Jim. Well, it's been another really busy week. I've been engaged in a project that I'm happy to say that I've done my part on it so far. I'm engaged in a book project with 24 other authors. And it's a book that's going to be published by the Wellness Universe, but also in conjunction with, I should say, with Brave Healer Publishing. So I'm excited about that. I think it's going to be a really awesome book. It's going to have a tremendous amount of information for people. And this particular one is going to be dealing with really stress, how we reduce stress. And I think most of us would agree that during these times we're in right now, there's a lot of stress. And all of us do need different ways that we can approach stress, eliminate it completely if at all possible, but at the very least lessen its effect on us and what we do and who we are. And I think that's important. But as I was finishing up the chapter that I'm writing, and the chapter I'm writing is called Embracing Life. And there's a part in there that I really haven't looked at in quite some time. I've written about it before and I haven't thought about it in some time, but it came up for me as I was writing. And I think it's important to bring that back to the surface. Now, when the book comes out, which will be in November, you'll have an opportunity to really read this in more detail. But I do want to talk about this whole idea because I do think it's something that, well, I'm going to say most of us struggle with, at least those who are looking to better understand who they are and how they can live in full expression of that truth of who they are, that knowing of who they are. So I'm just going to give you a bit of a backstory with how this all came to be for me. And as you know, I talk about my early morning walks all the time. So I went on this walk this one morning and I was questioning who I am, what I'm doing, whether or not what I'm doing is having any impact. I also was questioning whether or not I was living up to what I believed. And that's a key word, what I believed a spiritually based, spiritually oriented person would be doing. Now, I also know that I had and have thoughts that I don't feel are necessarily aligned with what I believe a spiritual person would have. And there were certain things that I've done and perhaps continue to do that I wouldn't say this is what a spiritual person would do, at least against what I believed was the definition of what a spiritual person would be. Now, go on my walk, I asked the question, I said, what's going on? Why am I having such a difficult time with this? Why am I feeling like I'm not living up to the life that I want to live? Why do I feel like I'm not living up to what I believe a spiritual person would be? And the immediate answer that came to me was, and I started laughing because I thought it was really kind of humorous. And the answer that immediately came to me was, stop trying to be the perfect human and just be perfectly human. And that to me was such a profound answer, and I absolutely agree with it. Because I almost said we, and maybe I could use we, but I'm going to use me, or I do struggle with that. I do feel that there are certain ways of thinking and certain ways of being that I have in my head that a spiritual person would be. And when I don't live up to that, that creates that friction, that tension in me. And so I'm constantly looking at, well, how can I change the way I'm thinking and the way I'm living so that it aligns more with what I believe a spiritual being should be? All right, so here's the point. We've all heard that we're spiritual beings having a human experience. Okay, so a couple things are going to come out of this. We are to have the human experience. We are to have the emotions. We're here to have all of the experiences that we possibly can in physical form. I'm having this experience as the divine spiritual being that I am in the physical body, the embodiment of that spiritual being as Jim Phillips. And it's not about me, Jim Phillips, trying to become that spiritual being. I already am that. It's about allowing that spiritual being, that higher aspect of my true self, to be the experience and expression through this physical body, Jim Phillips. Now, that might not make sense to some of you. It is what I believe is taking place. And I think that what we need to do is we need to let go of this idea that we have to keep pushing and pushing and pushing as a human being to be the spiritual being and allow the spiritual being that we actually are in truth to be what's experiencing and expressing through us and as us. All right, now I'm going to cause a little bit more confusion. What is experiencing and expressing through you and as you is your spiritual being. That is what is here to do that. However, we limit that based on the thoughts and beliefs we hold about who we think we are, who we believe we are, and what we believe we're capable of doing. Now, I'm going to add one more component to this. And this is that, and I find it surprising because I hear this all the time, especially from people who are engaged in teaching spiritual concepts or in talking about who they are as spiritual beings. And too often when people do something that isn't aligned with what they believe to be this spiritual being, they'll make the statement, or they'll state, I'm only human. All right, so here's the question. Are you the spiritual being or are you the human being? Because if we say, I did this because I'm only human, well, then that means that you don't really believe that you're this spiritual being. That means you believe that this is it, that you are this physical body and this is it. This is who's experiencing and expressing on this planet, doing the things that we do. Now, does the human side have an influence on the spiritual side and how we experience and express life? Absolutely, I just mentioned that. The physical, the human side actually is what limits our experience and expression as the divine spiritual being that we are. So I would just suggest that when you are moving through your life and you're making decisions and you're taking action and you're having experiences, and if things don't turn out quite the way that you anticipated they would, or whatever idea you had of the way that it should turn out, and then you fall back on that excuse, because that's really what it is, I'm human, I'm just human. Because that's basically saying that because I did this, it's because I'm human. And that's my excuse for it. And yet we go out and we teach and we share information and we tell people that we're this spiritual being. All right, so let me just wrap all this up. It might sound kind of confusing. It might sound like I'm contradicting myself, especially when I first started off by saying that what I was told in my guidance was stop trying to be the perfect human and just be perfectly human. I agree with that. But this being perfectly human is to have the experiences that I'm going to have in physical form, but it's also allowing the divine being, which I truly am, to be what is experienced and expressing through this physical body. So if you find yourself beating yourself up, criticizing yourself for what you do or what you think, or you feel like you're not living up to what you believe, and again, key words there, what you believe this spiritual being should be or how it should experience and express in this world. When you find yourself beating yourself up, first of all, don't say, I'm only human, because you're not only human. This physical body is the humanness, that is us. You are the divine being that's experiencing and expressing through this physical body. Give yourself a break. Understand that because we're here in human form and because we have this opportunity, in my case as Jim Phillips, to live in this planet, I'm going to do certain things that would not feel like, or in my own idea of what I believe a spiritual being to be, is not going to be in alignment with that. It doesn't mean that I have the excuse that I'm only human. I'm not only human. I am a divine spiritual being that's experiencing and expressing through this physical body that you all know as Jim Phillips. I hope you all find some benefit from this. If it's confusing, I would love your comments. I would love to have you interact with me on this. I'll be more than happy to give you a little bit more detail in terms of how I understand this. It's something that's continuously evolving, or that I'm becoming more aware of. It's more of a revelation for me. So I'm going through that process. So there may be more information on this that I get that I'll be able to better explain to you what it is that I mean. But I hope you gained something from it. If you did, and if you feel there's others who could gain from this, I would appreciate you sharing this video with them wherever you're watching it. As you know, I greatly appreciate you watching these videos. It's an honor and a pleasure to be able to share this information with you. And your feedback's critically important to me, because I want to know what you're thinking. I want to know where you might be in your life, and if there's anything that I've experienced or information that I have that might benefit you so that you can gain a greater understanding of who you are and what you're here to do, I would love the opportunity to share that with you. So thank you. I appreciate you. I look forward to these times together. Until next time, take care, be well. We'll see you then. Bye now.